In the soft hush of the ancient northern winds, before kingdoms merged and emperors rose to rule, there were whispers across the highlands and steppe, whispers of fear, of defense, and of dreams built in stone. The story of the Great Wall of China is not merely the tale of a wall. It is the story of vision, endurance, sacrifice, and silent sentinels that once stood between empires and eternity. In those early days, China was not yet the China we know. It was a patchwork of competing kingdoms, some mighty, some fragile, each vulnerable to the tides of time and the arrows of nomadic invaders. The idea of a wall, a barrier to guard the north, was not born in a single moment. It germinated slowly, like the winding river carving through ancient rock, formed from the needs of survival, defense, and imperial pride. The origins can be traced back to the 7th century BCE, when individual states began erecting smaller walls of tamped earth and stone. These were modest barriers at first, no more than attempts to defend themselves from raids, especially from the Xiongnu tribes. But as dynasties rose and fell, the walls grew longer, connecting across hills and valleys like threads on an emperor's robe. It was during the reign of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China in 221 BCE, that the ambition truly took form. He ordered the joining of these disparate walls into a single, immense bulwark. For him, it was more than military defense. It was a symbol of unity, of a nation stitched together by vision and labor. Now, imagine for a moment the life of a man called Li Jian, a simple farmer from the valleys near what is now Gansu province. Li was not a soldier, nor was he an architect, but he was summoned by decree, as were hundreds of thousands. He left his family behind in the quiet folds of the countryside to journey north, where stone met sky, and mountains would soon wear a crown of walls. Each day, Li woke before the sun had stretched its limbs across the horizon. His hands, already coarse from farming, now bled from lifting stones. He wore robes faded from dust and sweat. Meals were simple, rice gruel if he was lucky. Yet he worked, as did the thousands beside him. Some were conscripted soldiers, others criminals seeking redemption, and many, just like Li, were ordinary folk, conscripted into something far larger than themselves. The wall was not built as one uniform structure. In some places, it was packed earth reinforced with wooden palisades. In others, it was stone laid with such precision that even centuries later, the mortar has held fast against the winds. Watchtowers dotted the ridge, spaced for visibility and signal fires. In harsh winters, men wrapped themselves in straw cloaks. In summer, they toiled under a sun that knew no mercy. And yet, they built on. The architects of the wall designed it not merely as a barrier, but as a living line. Its path curved with the terrain, zigzagging over mountains, cutting through deserts, and snaking across the land like a stone dragon. Every curve served a purpose. High ridges allowed a vantage point. Narrow passes forced enemies into bottlenecks. The wall was strategy, discipline, and design incarnate. But it was not only a military construct. The Great Wall brought roads with it. Paths once wild became trade arteries. Soldiers and messengers travelled faster. Markets grew near garrisons. Inns appeared, then settlements, then cities. The wall became the spine along which parts of the Chinese economy expanded, particularly in the Ming dynasty. Silk, salt, and tea flowed along these routes, connecting heartlands with the frontier. And as commerce moved, so too did culture. Calligraphy, music, folklore, they all filtered along the wall's shadow. Poems were etched into stone by soldiers yearning for home. Paintings captured the view from parapets. The wall whispered stories not just of conflict, but of continuity. It defended, it divided, but it also defined. As the wall aged, dynasties layered their own stone atop older foundations. The Han, the Sui, the Tang, the Ming, all added their chapters, and in doing so, the wall became a palimpsest of history, memory, and resilience. And so, as we lie down tonight and drift into the calm of distant echoes, imagine the stone against your fingers, the wind from the north brushing past your cheeks. You are standing atop a wall that once stretched across the world's imagination, a wall not of hate, but of hope, not only of protection, but of permanence. Rest now. There is much more to tell, and we shall walk its winding path together, slowly, quietly, one stone at a time. The sun climbed slowly in the east, casting a golden warmth over the sprawling ridges of the Yan Mountains. Here, the wall etched its way across jagged peaks, a silent sentinel that curved and bent, not with defiance, but with an ancient patience. To the traveler, it might have seemed like a marvel of design, but for those like Li Jian, who lived and breathed each brick, it was a labor of devotion. Li's days became rhythm, stone upon stone, breath upon breath. He learned, like many others, the value of silence. Words were rare on the wall. Most men saved their voices for prayer, for muttering names of loved ones, or for cries carried away by the wind. Conversations were made through shared glances, through hands passing tools, through the cadence of footsteps rising together on scaffolded paths. Each worker had a role. Some carried bricks and stone up narrow paths cut into the mountain. Others molded earth and straw into hardened walls. Skilled masons laid stones in perfect sequence, guided by supervisors who held blueprints drawn in delicate ink. The blueprint scrolls, when unrolled, resembled the veins of a leaf, intricate, natural, and alive. Despite the immense scale, there was remarkable precision in design. Wall segments were aligned to take advantage of terrain. Cliffs acted as barriers. Rivers served as moats. In certain places, the width of the wall allowed for horses to gallop along its spine, and all along its length stood beacons, watchtowers, built in sight of each other, so that messages could be relayed from tower to tower in a matter of hours. Fire by night, smoke by day. This was the ancient internet of the empire. During winter, snow blanketed the stones, rendering them slick and treacherous. Men wrapped their feet in rags and burned dried roots to keep warm. They huddled in shared tents made of canvas and timber, their dreams echoing the lives they left behind. Wives spinning silk, children playing in bamboo groves, old parents waiting for letters that would never come. The diet was austere: dried millet, boiled cabbage, the occasional salted fish. Yet, among this simplicity, bloomed community. At night, when the fires glowed and shadows danced on tent walls, the men would whisper stories, hum lullabies, and carve small wooden charms for luck. Li Jian carried a small stone in his sleeve, a smooth river stone his son had handed him before he departed. He rubbed it between his fingers each morning, a quiet ritual of remembrance, of grounding. But while the wall demanded sacrifice, it also offered something else: purpose. To the emperors, The Great Wall was a testament to power. To scholars, it was a marvel of ingenuity. To poets, it was a symbol of sorrow and perseverance. And to those who built it, it became their legacy, etched not in name, but in the solidity of stone. As centuries passed, emperors changed, capitals shifted, and dynasties fell like leaves on the wind. Yet the wall remained, weathering time like an old guardian. Some sections crumbled, others were rebuilt. In the Ming dynasty, long after Legion's bones had returned to the earth, the wall was fortified with bricks and lime, buttressed by towers and barracks, extended with fierce discipline. It was during this time that the wall became more than a defense. It was transformed into a dynamic military corridor. Along its length were stationed garrisons, command posts, and supply depots. Soldiers conducted drills, guarded passes, and watched the horizon for raiders. This constant vigilance wove a culture of resilience into the northern frontier. And then came trade. With protection came passage. Merchants traveled along the safety of the wall's shadow. Markets blossomed where military posts stood. Camels laden with silk, porcelain, and tea trudged beside traders from Persia, India, and beyond. The wall became not only a sword, but a bridge, linking east and west, stone and soul. Villages arose around key fortresses. Artisans, blacksmiths, and weavers set up homes, raising children who knew the wall not as a monument, but as part of their landscape. It was said that children born near the wall learned to walk on its stones before they could walk on soil. In temples nearby, monks chanted beneath bells shaped like lotus buds, their prayers drifting skyward as if to offer protection to the men still stationed along the parapets. The wall became spiritual too, a place of reverence and ritual. Some even claimed to see ancestral spirits in the morning mist, pacing the length of the wall, keeping watch still. Even now, long after cannon and gunpowder replaced arrows and swords, the great wall endures. It whispers to the heavens through its broken teeth and moss-covered stones. Birds nest in its crevices. The sun kisses it each dawn. And in its silence, you can still hear the echo of footfalls, of chisels striking stone, of men singing lullabies to the wind. It is more than a wall. It is a memory, alive, vast, and endlessly unfolding. Close your eyes now. Let the journey drift on like the mist along the ramparts. You are safe. You are among echoes of 1,000 years, and the wall, ever patient, is still watching. As dawn peeled away the soft shroud of night, the wall awoke again, not with fanfare, but with the quiet sounds of wind, footfall, and breath. Day after day, year after year, this rhythm endured, outlasting the clamour of battle drums, the thundering hooves of invading horsemen, and the delicate crackle of parchment scrolls filled with royal decrees. It endured not because it was indestructible, but because it was necessary. In the mind of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the idea of the wall was both literal and symbolic. A physical divider against northern threats, yes, but also a line drawn through history. He envisioned not only a fortress, but a foundation for unity, where law would stretch as far as stone, and order would be carved as firmly as the wall itself. But like all great undertakings, the wall came at a cost. Countless workers perished during its early years, some from exhaustion, others from injury, many from exposure to bitter winters and long marches through wilderness. It is said that so many lives were lost that the wall was once known as the longest cemetery on earth. But the truth lies not just in tragedy, but in tribute. For their sacrifice bore a legacy that would stretch beyond kingdoms, beyond centuries. Among the workers, there was no caste or class. Nobles who had fallen from grace, scholars accused of dissent, peasants from far villages, they all found themselves shoulder to shoulder under the emperor's command. Some protested, others surrendered to fate, but most, like Li Jian, simply endured. They found meaning not in obedience, but in the shape their hands gave to the future. On the scaffoldings, a language of gesture emerged. A raised hand meant stone incoming. A short whistle meant watchtower. And in the evenings, beneath the stars, workers carved poetry into the wall's softer bricks. Many of these verses have eroded, but some remain, lines of longing, prayer, and resolve etched into the very body of the wall. One such verse, barely visible beneath layers of time, read, "To my son, whose name I whisper in every stone laid, let the wall hold me fast, for my soul is in its weight." It was not only men who gave shape to the Great Wall. Women, too, played their part, sometimes in the form of stories, sometimes in legend. The tale of Meng Jiangnu, whose husband died building the wall, is still sung softly by elders near the Hebei stretches. It is said that her tears were so sorrowful they caused a section of the wall to crumble, revealing his bones. Her grief became a symbol not of defeat, but of the human cost behind imperial dreams. And still, the wall grew. Its design was deeply purposeful. In steep terrains, bricks were lugged up by goat paths or rope pulleys. In deserts, sand and reed were mixed with clay to bind the walls against shifting dunes. Near the coastlines, stone was bound with slaked lime and glutinous rice, a technique that made the joints harder than the bricks themselves. Engineers developed detailed measurements, adjusting height and width to the surrounding geography. Every 50 meters or so stood a watchtower, some square, some circular. These served not only as lookouts, but as communication hubs and storehouses. Signal fires were lit in patterns, creating coded messages that stretched hundreds of kilometers in hours. The ingenuity behind this system remains unmatched in many ways. Over time, pathways were carved along the top of the wall for ease of movement. Soldiers could march 2, sometimes 3 abreast along these narrow battlements. When snow fell, crews were sent with brooms made of pine branches, sweeping the stone to prevent slipping. Even the smallest details were accounted for. Grooves carved for drainage, arrow slits angled against the sun, platforms positioned for the best acoustic range of horns. It was a marvel of anticipation. And then there were the hidden layers, the unseen veins beneath the surface. Along stretches of the wall, tunnels were carved into hillsides, connecting barracks and supply caches. These subterranean corridors, lit with oil lamps, carried whispers and war plans. In some places, escape routes were dug, not for retreat, but for tactical redirection, allowing defenders to outmaneuver attackers through shadow and silence. Yet, even as the wall bristled with function, it pulsed with something older, myth. Locals spoke of dragons that had chosen the wall's path, guiding its direction with their invisible breath. They claimed the stone followed energy lines in the earth, that its winding form wasn't random, but celestial. Scholars from the Tang dynasty even wrote that the wall aligned with the stars during solstices, a theory debated still in quiet libraries. Whether truth or tale, it added a layer of reverence. Meanwhile, as centuries flowed like rivers downstream, the wall began to shape not just the frontier, but the soul of China itself. It became a metaphor in songs, a lesson in patience, a shrine to perseverance. Painters inked its silhouette into scrolls. Scholars quoted it in essays. Even emperors who added no stones to it still claimed its legacy, for to rule China was to inherit the wall. Now, as we lie still and let time wash over us like a gentle stream, imagine standing atop the wall at twilight. The sky is turning lavender, the horizon melting into blue mist. Below, the land stretches wide and quiet, and the only sound is the whisper of a breeze moving through ancient stone. Each brick has a name, each tower has a story, and every curve carries the weight of human hope. Rest now. The journey is far from over, but there is no hurry. The wall will wait, as it always has. The Ming dynasty, with its flourishing culture and disciplined governance, brought new life to the Great Wall. During their reign, from the 14th to the 17th century, they undertook one of the most massive reconstructions in the wall's history. What had once been a patchwork of earthen mounds and stone segments was now meticulously reinforced with bricks, limestone, and granite. The wall became not just a fortification, but a spine of the empire, stretching, coiling, vigilant. The decision to reinforce the wall was not made lightly. The threat from northern tribes, particularly the Mongols, loomed ever present, and so the Ming emperors invested vast resources to secure their borders, not just with soldiers and weapons, but with architecture, surveillance, and deeply layered defenses. The wall became a living military ecosystem. Watchtowers were now built with multiple levels, housing troops and equipment, stocked with food supplies and armories. Barracks lined the interior. Guard units, called Wei Suo, were assigned specific wall segments to patrol and maintain. Each commander reported directly to the Central Military Command, orders flowing from capital to wall and back again. Soldiers stationed along the wall lived regimented lives. At dawn, the horns would blow, a deep, low hum that rolled across the hills. Morning drills followed, then inspections, archery practice, wall maintenance, and patrol rotations structured the day. At night, men took turns manning the beacons, lighting fires or waving banners depending on visibility. And still, in their quiet moments, many returned to stillness. They gazed at the stars, trying to trace constellations shaped like their home villages. They wrote poetry in the margins of their military logs, verses that were tender, lonely, and full of longing. Some took to carving charms from bone or wood, stringing them to their spears or belts for luck. These were men of war, yes, but they were also sons, brothers, and dreamers. For them, the wall was both exile and duty, but over time, it became something more. The communities that blossomed near the wall gave birth to a new frontier culture, one that blended Han Chinese customs with the traditions of nomadic peoples. Festivals were held at garrisons. Market days invited traders from neighboring steppes. Children from different tribes played together, speaking a hybrid tongue of borderland dialects. In this unexpected mingling, a subtle unity emerged. Even the architecture reflected this blend. Near Jiayuguan, the westernmost fortress of the wall. The designs incorporated Persian and Central Asian motifs. In the eastern reaches near Shanhaiguan, the gates were inscribed with poetry and philosophical sayings from Confucian, Taoist, and even Buddhist traditions, an echo of China's vast and layered soul. The Great Wall had become more than a barrier. It was now a bridge between peoples, beliefs, and time. But the wall's story is not simply one of physical endurance. It also shaped China's internal view of itself. Over generations, the wall came to symbolize the boundaries of the known world. What lay within was Zhongguo, the Middle Kingdom, a realm of order, ritual, and refinement. Beyond it stretched the unknown, sometimes dangerous, sometimes enticing, but always other. This psychological boundary shaped literature, art, and governance. The idea of protection wasn't just from armies, it was from chaos, from forgetting who you were. The wall thus held back more than enemies. It held back dissolution, preserved memory. And yet, there were moments when even this stone leviathan trembled. In the 17th century, the Manchus crossed the wall, invited in, ironically, by a Ming general, disillusioned by imperial betrayal. The wall did not fall in battle. It was opened by human choice. The Qing dynasty rose, the Ming fell, and the wall once again became quiet stone, watching dynasties change like tides. But still, it remained. Wind eroded its towers, roots grew through its cracks, and yet, in so many places, it stood, a testament to the resilience of both material and spirit. Let us, now, return once more to the lives that gave this monument breath. There was a woman named Yilan, born in a village near the wall during the late Ming era. Her father was a signalman. Her mother wove cloaks for the soldiers. Yilan grew up playing in the shadow of the watchtower, tracing the ridges with her fingers, listening to the echo of distant drums. When she turned 16, she began inscribing tiny poems into the mortar between bricks. She believed the wall could hear her. One of her poems remains, "Stone above sky, winds that never sleep. May this wall remember me when my footsteps are gone." She married a guard, bore 2 children, and died in her 80s, never once leaving the valley. And yet, she too shaped the wall, not with stone, but with presence, with memory. Like so many, her story was absorbed into its quiet eternity. And that is perhaps the greatest truth of the Great Wall. It is not merely a structure built by emperors or soldiers. It is a tapestry of all those who lived near it, touched it, feared it, defended it, and dreamed beneath it. Tonight, as you rest, picture the wall not in its grandeur, but in its softness. Picture the warm earth it's built upon. Picture the thousands of hands that shaped it. Picture Li Jian and Yilan and the children who played along its edge. You are not apart from history. You are simply listening to it whisper, "Sleep now. The wall watches still." Very well. Here is a significantly larger segment, continuing in the same tranquil, immersive tone. Let us continue our long walk along the wall, letting the world of yesterday ease the mind and settle the spirit. The seasons passed across the wall like dreams, bright spring flowers budding between stones, summer heat shimmering off the granite like distant mirages, autumn winds scattering red and gold leaves down the wall's length, and snow falling soft as whispers in winter's hush. The wall did not resist time. It received it, held it, and wore it with grace. By the 18th century, during the reign of the Qing dynasty, the wall's function began to shift, with the borders now extended well beyond the traditional frontier lines. The Great Wall no longer served its original military purpose in full. The empire had grown, and so too had its sense of security. Yet no one thought to tear the wall down. It had passed beyond utility and into memory, into myth. Local communities had grown so used to its presence that it became an essential part of daily life. In villages perched near the battlements, children carried baskets along the walkways. Merchants hung their wares from the old guardrails, and farmers used stones from broken segments to build pens for livestock or patch roofs. Some saw this as desecration, others saw it as harmony, history being folded gently into life. Old men in quiet courtyards told tales of times when fire signals lit up the sky and soldiers stood like shadows against the moon. But for most, the wall was simply there, like the mountains or the rivers. A fact of the land. The wall, after all, was not a single line. It was a complex web of fortifications, ditches, beacon towers, and watchposts stretching over 21,000 kilometers in total, across deserts, plateaus, mountains, and grasslands. Its structure changed with its environment. In the west, near the Gobi Desert, it was made of rammed earth. In the central regions, bricks and quarried stones. And in the east, near the Bohai Sea, it ended where land gives way to water. A final gesture of human hands touching the sea's breath. At one time, more than 1 million people were estimated to have worked on the wall throughout its history. This included not only laborers, but also engineers, stonemasons, blacksmiths, cooks, rope makers, scribes, and physicians. Their combined efforts created more than just a barrier. They created an era. Among them were entire families. Sons followed fathers. Cousins enlisted together. Generations were tied to the stone in ways deeper than loyalty, through the passage of blood and memory. In some areas, names of families were engraved discreetly in corners of the wall, faded now, but still visible to the careful eye. It was their way of saying, we were here, we mattered. But even beyond its creation, the wall left an impact far wider than its physical reach. Economically, it catalyzed development in remote regions. Roads built alongside it improved transportation for military and civilian needs alike. Garrisons turned into towns. Markets sprouted near military supply posts. Artisans sold pottery, iron tools, lanterns, and wool cloaks to soldiers and their families. Taverns and tea houses flourished where once there had only been barren stone. In times of peace, the wall's pathways became channels for trade, not just for goods, but for people and ideas. Philosophers journeyed its length, writing about the impermanence of borders. Musicians carried melodies from the capital to the frontier and back. The flow of knowledge mirrored the flow of silk, jade, and grain. It wasn't only what the wall kept out, it was what it allowed to pass through with trust and structure. Culturally, the wall became an enduring symbol in Chinese consciousness. Calligraphers inked it in scrolls. Poets referenced its might and melancholy. Painters depicted it winding across mountains like a brushstroke of the heavens. Even emperors invoked it in their speeches, its endurance a metaphor for imperial permanence, its length a symbol of celestial mandate. Some believed the wall echoed the contours of the Milky Way above, a dragon below mirroring the dragon of the stars. Rituals were even performed at major gates. Offerings of rice and wine were laid at the base of ancient towers to honor the spirits of those who died during construction. Monks chanted along certain stretches, believing the wall could channel divine protection, acting as both physical and spiritual shield. In folk tales, the wall became animate. It was said to move at night, to groan under the weight of history. Some believed that in storms one could hear voices carried through its stones, warnings, regrets, or quiet lullabies from souls long gone. And still, it endured. As the Qing dynasty faded and the 20th century emerged, the wall entered yet another chapter. No longer needed for defense, it began to fade into the background of a modernizing nation. Railways cut through it. Cities expanded past it. But even as new roads replaced old ones, the wall held on, not in its entirety, but in memory, in presence. In the 1900s, travelers from Europe, America, and beyond began to visit the wall. They brought back stories of its immense scale, its lonely beauty, its crumbling majesty. Scholars studied its design. Photographers captured its vastness. And slowly, the wall was reimagined, not as a fortress, but as a global treasure. The people of China never forgot. Restoration efforts began in the 20th century, especially after the founding of the People's Republic. Sections near Beijing, like Badaling and Mutianyu, were reinforced and open to visitors. What once echoed only the cries of soldiers now carried the quiet footsteps of pilgrims, tourists, and historians. But the real wall, the soul of the wall, remained far from the crowds, in the remote hills, where moss grew between ancient bricks and clouds drifted low over the stones. There, silence reigns. There, if you listen closely, you can still hear the sound of tools shaping granite, the hum of a worker's lullaby, the sigh of wind that has seen dynasties rise and fall. There, the wall is not for display, it is for remembrance. As you rest now, breathing slow and even, imagine yourself walking a stretch of the wild wall, one untouched by modern hands. The path is narrow, worn with time. Grass brushes your legs, the sun warms the top stones, and ahead, the wall disappears into a mountain mist, as if it walks into the sky. You walk not alone. With you are ghosts of the past, builders, poets, guards, children, all at peace. They do not speak, but they guide you with quiet steps. In this place, you are held gently by the weight of history, by the warmth of memory. Sleep, traveler. The wall watches. The story continues. But not tonight. Tonight, we rest with the stones. And so, centuries moved as shadows on the wall. Dynasties fell to ink and fire, the names of emperors fading from gold-leaf scrolls. Yet the stones remained, bearing no banners, no boasting, only silence. After the final flame of the Qing dynasty flickered out in 1912, the wall, like much of China, entered an age of uncertainty. The Republic struggled to define itself amidst warlords and revolution. Battles raged far from the ancient parapets, and yet, in quiet corners, the wall still whispered its long memory into the wind. The people, too, changed. Generations born in the 20th century had never seen the wall manned by soldiers. Many lived unaware of its length, its purpose, its story. For some, it was simply a broken line on a hill, covered in wild grass. For others, a ghost of something too large to understand. But even abandoned, it was never truly forgotten. In rural provinces, elders still gathered children around winter fires, telling stories of the wall not as a fortification, but as a being. It breathes when the fog rolls, they'd say. It sleeps beneath snow and wakes in storms. They described its twists and turns like the spine of an ancient beast who had coiled to guard the heart of China itself. And there was truth to this, in ways both poetic and profound, because though the wall no longer held soldiers, it continued to shape the people's sense of space, of boundary, of origin. In school books, its line defined the past. In maps, its silhouette curled like a calligraphic signature. It was no longer just defense, it was inheritance. Then came war again. In the 1930s, as the shadow of conflict stretched across Asia, the wall bore witness to pain once more. In the Second Sino-Japanese War, portions of the wall became part of the terrain of resistance. Soldiers camped in ruined towers. Civilians fled over its slopes. In Hebei and Shaanxi provinces, walls scarred by centuries now echoed again with rifle fire, foreign boots treading ancient stone. The wall did not flinch. It did not crumble, but it watched, enduring, as it always had. After the war, and after the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the wall entered yet another life, this time not as a relic of war, but as a symbol of peace and identity. In the decades that followed, the country transformed. Cities rose, rivers were dammed, the sky filled with the pulse of industry. And yet, amidst all this change, the wall remained constant, weather-worn, proud, quiet. It became a place where the new China could meet the old, where the future could bow its head respectfully to the past. Sections near Beijing, Badaling, Mutianyu, Jinshanling were restored stone by stone. Tourists arrived in trickles, then floods. Flags waved, cameras flashed, and guides spoke of emperors long gone. For many, walking the wall became a rite, a pilgrimage into their own heritage. Yet, the heart of the wall beat far from these paths. In the wilderness, wild wall segments sleep beneath moss and bramble. Birds nest in broken towers. Mountain winds whistle through arrow slits carved centuries ago. There are no souvenir stands here, only silence and the slow embrace of time. It is here, in the forgotten places, that one begins to feel the weight of history, not as something distant, but as something warm, like a hand resting on your shoulder, like a voice, very old, very calm, saying, "You are part of something greater." Imagine yourself standing in such a place. The grass is high, the sky is full of migrating clouds. Behind you stretches the winding back of the wall, vanishing over hills like a dream retreating into the mind. You kneel down and place your hand on the stone. It is cool. It is firm. It hums, not with noise, but with memory. And then you close your eyes. In your quiet, you see flickers of the past. You see Li Jian, the old farmer-turned-laborer, lifting stone with cracked hands and a quiet song. You see the mason, bent with age but steady in work, chiseling curves into gate arches, meant to withstand siege and storm. You see Yilan, the young girl scribbling poems into the mortar between bricks, her words surviving centuries longer than her breath. You see soldiers wrapped in fur, faces stung by snow, lighting the watchtower fire with numb fingers. You see traders on camels, carrying silk and dreams, offering gifts at gatehouses before continuing along the wall's flanks. You see the ghost of a Tang dynasty monk, walking the wall's entire length in search of stillness, muttering mantras with every step. You see the wall alive, not as a ruin, not as a monument, but as a vessel of labor and longing, a vessel of memory, a vessel of everything that made China China. And finally, you see yourself, part of the story now, a quiet visitor, a listener, someone who carries this weight, not with burden, but with reverence. And so, as the night folds over the wall like a velvet robe, you begin to lie back against its stones. The stars are emerging, clear and unblinking. The wind is soft. No armies are coming. No horns are sounding. The world is finally at rest. The wall holds you like a cradle, not for defense, but for dreaming. And in your dream, the wall continues to stretch, not across land, but across time, not toward the sky, but toward the heart. Sleep now. Let the wall guard your thoughts, just as it guarded a nation. Let your breath match the rhythm of its stone heart. Let your mind walk where footfalls echo no more. You are home. The wall, so long a protector of empires, so long a silent witness to sorrow and triumph alike, finally began to rest in the later years of the 20th century. As the din of modern life grew louder, the wall retreated. Not physically, for its stones remained, but spiritually. No longer was it asked to defend, to divide, or to judge. It was allowed at last to simply be. And in that stillness, it began to be seen differently, not as a relic of war, but as a monument to perseverance. In 1987, UNESCO recognized the Great Wall of China as a World Heritage Site. That designation was not merely a legal or cultural title. It was a kind of global recognition, a bow of the head from all nations to something greater than empire. The wall had outlived the men who ordered its construction, the dynasties that carved its bricks, and the armies that once thundered beneath its gaze. It had, quite simply, become eternal. But even as the wall found fame and admiration, there were challenges. Tourism, while breathing new interest into the wall, also brought wear. Foot traffic wore down old paths. Weather took its toll on unmaintained sections. In remote stretches, villagers scavenged stones for homes, unaware of the legacy they displaced. And so, a new kind of guardian was born, not a soldier, not a craftsman, but the conservationist. Teams of archaeologists, historians, and stonemasons began to traverse the full length of the wall, not to rebuild it as it once was, but to understand it, protect it, and preserve its silent song. Drones flew over vast desert ruins. Photogrammetry was used to capture every crumbling tower in digital stillness. Local communities were educated on how to protect the wall, not with force, but with pride. In this new century, the Great Wall stretches beyond stone. It stretches into story, into data, into memory. It is scanned, mapped, and even rendered in virtual reality. Children across the world, sitting in schools far from Asia, can walk its length in simulated space. They can stand atop towers that once held fire and frost. They can hear tales of Lijian, of Yilan, of the ghost drums at night. And so, the wall lives on, not only in place, but in imagination. But what truly is the wall's legacy? Some would say it is military, proof that an empire can guard itself across time and terrain. Others say it is architectural, evidence of planning, of geometry, of genius in the face of nature. Still others say it is cultural, a thread that ties together villages, provinces, and dynasties into one long narrative. But perhaps its deepest legacy is spiritual. For to walk the wall is to confront the scale of human endeavor. To stand upon its stones is to feel the echo of countless souls who gave their days, sometimes their lives, to something they would never see finished, something they could not own, something that would outlive them. And that, perhaps, is the essence of human greatness, to build not for the self, but for the future, to carve stones not for glory, but for continuity, to leave behind something so vast, so silent, and yet so deeply full of meaning that even the stars pause to notice. Imagine now that you are walking one final stretch of the wall. The day is ending. The sky is turning amber and indigo. A breeze stirs the tall grass that has grown beside the old stones. You see an ancient watchtower ahead, its shape softened by time. A bird lands atop its ruined spire, then takes flight again. You pause, you breathe, you place one hand on the stone. It is warm from the day, cool from the evening. You close your eyes, and suddenly you feel them, the people, all of them, not as ghosts, but as warmth. You feel the farmer, with dust on his brow, stacking bricks beside a child. You feel the stonemason, humming to himself as he sculpts a dragon into the base of a parapet. You feel the soldier, quiet in thought, standing at the edge, watching for fires that never come. You feel the emperor, not in silk and power, but in age and solitude, wondering if this wall would truly last. You feel the mother, walking beneath it, wondering when her son will return. And finally, you feel yourself, not as visitor, but as part of them. You too have walked the wall. You too have listened. And you too now carry its story forward, not in stone, not in scroll, but in stillness. Sleep now. Let your breath fall gently, like dust across stone. Let your thoughts settle into the grooves of history. Let the quiet miles behind you fade into a hush. You are no longer walking, you are resting, and the wall, faithful, timeless, rests with you. By now, the wall had become more than an object, more than a boundary. It had become a language, not spoken, but felt, a language written in wind, in silence, in the worn soles of boots, and in the fingertips that brushed its time-smoothed surface. For the villagers who grew up in its shadow, the wall was a landmark and a lullaby. It was the line on the horizon they followed home. It was the destination for childhood games and quiet contemplation. Grandparents would take their grandchildren by the hand and walk with them up the hill to touch its stones, to speak its story, to whisper to the bricks with soft reverence. The children did not always understand, but they remembered, and the wall remembered them. In some places, folk traditions grew around it. During certain festivals, particularly in the north, locals lit paper lanterns and released them from the top of the wall. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of glowing orbs would rise into the night sky, like sparks rising from a great campfire. It was said that the lanterns carried messages to ancestors who had died during the wall's construction, that the wind would carry them home. In winter, when snow buried the steppe and cloaked the towers, The wall seemed to fall into a deeper sleep. Icicles hung like crystal prayers from broken beams. Yet in the hearts of those who lived nearby, the wall's silence was comforting, as though it were guarding not just the land, but time itself. And in time, the wall became a mirror. Poets wrote not just of the wall's height or length, but of what it reflected back at them. It reflected endurance, sacrifice, distance, the ache of longing, and the warmth of legacy. It was a place to see what lay behind and what still lay ahead. One such poem, found scribbled on a page of a Qing-era traveller's notebook, read, "Above the world, I walk alone, yet walk with 10,000 footsteps before me. The stones are cold, but memory is warm, and though I leave, the wall will carry me." And it is true, the wall carries all who touch it. In the 21st century, as satellites chart its every curve, and international travellers stand where ancient guards once stood, the wall continues to evolve, not in shape, but in meaning. It is no longer only China's. It belongs to the human story. For there is a wall in all of us, a wall we build from persistence, from the need to protect, to connect, to endure. A wall made not from brick, but from effort, from the wish to hold on to something, even as time presses us forward. And perhaps this is why so many are drawn to it, not just to walk its ridges or photograph its length, but to feel, if only for a moment, part of something far greater than themselves, to be small in a way that feels comforting, to be reminded that long before us, others labored and dreamed, and that long after us, the stone will still hold the sun. It is hard not to feel reverent in its presence. Even in decay, the wall remains. Sections have fallen into ruin, overrun by wild vines, buried by landslides, eroded by wind. Yet each fallen brick is no less sacred. Each crumbled tower is not a failure, but a whisper, a fragment of breath from the past. There are efforts now, across provinces and even continents, to preserve what remains. International organizations fund restoration projects. Local governments pass laws to protect the wall's legacy. Volunteers hike for days, carrying tools on their backs, carefully restoring sections by hand. But for every effort to preserve its body, there is another to preserve its soul. Writers pen novels inspired by its solitude. Painters capture the way dawn light caresses its curves. Musicians compose pieces that echo the rhythm of marching feet and mountain wind. Children act out stories of soldiers and poets, of emperors and stonecutters, and in doing so, they keep the wall alive, not as fortress, but as flame. And now, as we draw this stretch of our long walk to a pause, let us return once more to the wall at twilight. The sky is soft and silver. The last bird call has faded. A cool wind drifts down from the mountains, rustling the tall grasses beside the wall's edge. You sit on a quiet stone. Beneath your feet, centuries sleep. And as you close your eyes, you feel not alone. You feel the weight of hands that shaped the world. You feel the quiet blessing of those who came before. You feel the stone not as cold, but as comforting. You feel, perhaps for the first time in a long while, that you are safe, that you are part of something lasting. That time, though vast, is not cruel. It is gentle when we listen. Sleep now. You have walked far. The night is long, but the journey is soft. Let the wall keep watch. Let the wind carry you. Let silence wrap you like silk. You are home. In the deep quiet of the wall's forgotten segments, in the high mountains where no tourist treads, where no signposts point and no paths are paved, the stones sleep, undisturbed and still proud. These are the ancient bones of the wall, worn not only by time, but by wind, frost, and centuries of solitude. Here the towers lean, their outlines blurred by moss. Trees rise through crumbled battlements, their roots threading into history like careful fingers through a tapestry. Even animals pause here, foxes and snow leopards, birds with pale feathers, all moving quietly, as though not to wake something older than memory. In these places, the wall is no longer a monument of empire. It is part of the mountain. It is part of the earth. And yet, even here, it whispers. Travelers who have camped beside these ruined sections often speak of strange dreams. Dreams of voices in old dialects, of light flickering on distant hills, of footsteps pacing slowly across the stones. Not frightening dreams, but curious ones. As if the wall itself were remembering, and inviting them to remember too. There is an old legend among villagers near the wild wall of Inner Mongolia, one not written in books, but passed down by grandmothers to grandchildren over bowls of rice on winter nights. It speaks of a dragon, not a dragon of fire and fury, but of stone and silence. They say the wall was built along the sleeping body of this dragon, that its twists and curves follow the shape of his spine, that the wall breathes when the dragon dreams, and when the wall cracks or crumbles, it is because the dragon has turned in his slumber. According to this legend, the dragon is not to be feared. He is the guardian of stories, of bones, of forgotten songs. He is the keeper of echoes, and he will only awaken when the last stone of the wall is lost. A day, they say, that must never come. And so, even in decay, the people rebuild, not just with brick and mortar, but with memory. A farmer in Hebei province, whose family has lived by the wall for generations, once said, "We do not live beside the wall, we live with it." His grandfather pointed out where the goats should not graze, not for danger, but out of respect. His mother would sweep the path to the nearest watchtower once a month, laying wildflowers on a ledge with no plaque and no name. For the ones who carried the stones, she'd say, without needing to explain. And so, the wall survives, not only in structure, but in the gestures of those who live in its shadow, in the quiet act of telling a story, in the patient hand that guides a child to touch the stone, in the silence kept during the first snowfall of winter, because the wall, in truth, is not just China's story, it is humanity's. All of us, in some way, build walls between nations, within cities, inside ourselves. But sometimes, as with this wall, those same barriers become bridges. They become lines that hold not just others out, but identity in. Lines we can walk, learn from, and ultimately soften with understanding. This is why, for many, walking the wall is not just a physical act, but a spiritual one. You begin thinking it is long. You end understanding that it is deep. You begin believing it is strong. You end realizing that it is wise. And so, In these final hours of the night, imagine you are resting once more beside the wall. You are alone, but not lonely. The stars shimmer above, silver needles stitching through navy velvet. The wall stretches endlessly in both directions, each stone glowing faintly in the moonlight. And you, wrapped in a warm blanket of wind and time, breathe slowly, deeply. You run your fingers over a groove in the stone. Someone carved it centuries ago. You do not know their name, but they were here, and so are you. That connection is enough. No words are needed. Only rest. Only stillness. Only sleep. Let the wall keep your worries. Let the sky hold your questions. Let the earth cradle your thoughts until morning. The night is not heavy. It is soft. The journey is not over. But tonight, it pauses. You are not far from home. You are already there. The Great Wall, though known to most as a singular monolith, is not one wall at all, but a series of walls, fortifications, and bastions, strung together across geography like an embroidered dragon winding through the bones of the northern earth. The wall stretches from the eastern shores of Liaoning, where it first kisses the Bohai Sea, all the way westward to the deserts of Gansu, where the land begins to forget the sea and remember the wind. But in between, within the rising hills and falling shadows, lies a great truth. The wall is not defined by its stones, but by the space it creates, a space where the past can breathe, a space where memory can rest without urgency, a space where the rhythm of human hands laid out the slowest architecture ever built, not to touch the sky, but to speak to the earth. In the days of the Ming dynasty, when the wall was at its most magnificent, workers developed techniques refined over centuries. The limestone blocks were quarried far from the wall line itself and carried by cart, beast, and bare shoulder over ridges and ravines. The mortar, famously durable, was made with lime and a special binding agent derived from sticky rice. The mixture resisted erosion and allowed the wall to resist wind, snow, and even centuries of neglect. And yet, as strong as the wall became, it was never brutal. Its edges curved, flowed, followed the lines of the mountains rather than fighting them. One section, known as scimitai, winds along razor-sharp ridges, the walls often rising like sheer cliffs, with steps so steep they feel less like stairs and more like vertical prayers. There, the watchtowers rise, like sentinels of air and stone, each with its own window patterns and internal rooms where soldiers once cooked, slept, and waited. And they did wait. Many soldiers stationed on the wall spent most of their service without ever seeing battle. Their time was spent maintaining the stonework, writing letters home, cooking simple meals, boiling water over pine-fueled fires, and gazing into the northern wilderness where movement meant alarm and stillness meant routine. A letter from the Ming archives, dated over 400 years ago, reads, "The wind howls every night. We hear no horses, no drums, only the soft call of owls. But I dream of home each night, and in the mortar between the bricks, I hide words for my son." These hidden writings, known in folklore as mortar poems, were etched or whispered into the wet mixture by lonely workers and guards. Though few survive, they've become the stuff of legend, messages sealed inside a wall of vigilance, waiting centuries to be read again. Others found a strange peace in this life. The philosopher guard Wang Meilin wrote, "The mountain never speaks, and yet teaches. The wall never moves, and yet protects. I was sent here as punishment, but I have found the shape of silence. I do not fear the wall. I fear returning to a life that forgets how to listen." That was the deeper gift of the wall, not just its function, but its effect on the soul. Those who lived with it learned patience, learned stillness, learned to become small in the best of ways. Because to walk the wall's full length, from the first sea gate to the far reaches of Jiayuguan in the west, is to walk not through space, but through time. The journey crosses deserts of rust-colored sand, where nothing grows but memory. It crests ridgelines above the clouds, where the world feels ancient and unfinished. It passes through valleys, where villages were built with the walls broken bricks, and where children today still play in the shadow of towers that once held fire and arrow. These towers are spaced at intervals, each just within line of sight of the next. It was a simple genius, an ancient relay system. In times of invasion, the alarm would begin in the east. A fire, lit at dusk, signaled a threat. The next tower would respond, then the next. In under a day, the capital would know what had transpired 1,000 kilometers away. But it was not only fire that moved this fast. Hope traveled with equal speed. News of peace, of harvest, of treaties signed and enemies turned neighbors. The wall was a path not just of soldiers, but of messengers, merchants, monks, and musicians. Silk caravans skirted its flanks, following it like a lifeline. The famed Silk Road, though broader in reach, often paralleled the wall. Traders relying on its garrisons and protection. At Suzhou and beyond, the wall blends with the culture of the steppe. Outposts turn to oasis towns. Languages mix. The songs sung in campfires begin to adopt rhythms not from the court of Beijing, but from the nomads beyond the gate. And in this mingling, the wall becomes not a barrier, but a seam, stitching differences into unity, not separating, but connecting. The architecture shifts too. Out west, the wall becomes earth and tamped mud, layered like an old scroll. The stones disappear, the towers lower, but the intent remains. You can still feel it underfoot, the sense that someone once built this for something greater than themselves. And in the greatest sense of irony, the wall that once divided now connects us all. Today, visitors come from every nation, drawn not by conquest, but by curiosity. They walk in the footsteps of emperors, yes, but also of peasants, prisoners, and poets. They climb the steps worn by 1,000 years of sunrise. They touch the walls and leave no mark, but something inside them shifts. Because the wall teaches in silence. It teaches that endurance is built one brick at a time. That greatness comes not from speed, but from consistency. That strength lies not in walls we build to keep others out, but in the bridges we build through memory, understanding, and compassion. So tonight, as you lie still, as your breath slows and the night grows deep, imagine you are resting in the hollow of an old tower. The wind whistles gently through arrow slits. The stone beneath you is warm from the day's sun. The moon rises slowly, casting soft silver light over the mountains. And for a moment, just a moment, You feel the entire weight of history leaning into you, not to burden, but to support, as though the wall has become your spine, as though you are part of it now, not just a visitor, but a stone in the long line. You are held, you are remembered, you are enough. Sleep now. The wall watches, still. Dawn along the Great Wall is not an event. It is a process, slow, deliberate, as if the mountains themselves are reluctant to wake. The sun does not rise all at once, but seeps into the sky gradually, warming the tips of towers first, then spilling down the slopes, brushing dew from lichen, and glinting across the rough grains of stone like a quiet tide returning. It is in these moments, the golden hour between sleep and alertness, that the wall seems most alive. Birdsong echoes along the battlements. A faint breeze stirs old flags left tied by pilgrims, and the stones, still cool from night, begin to release their stored silence like breath. It is in this light that the wall shows its texture. You begin to see the subtle grooves worn into the bricks, not by machines, not by plans, but by hands. Calloused hands, weary hands, patient hands, hands that belong to fathers and sons, to strangers and rebels, to craftsmen who spoke no name, but left their mark in angle and line. Each segment of the wall carries the fingerprint of a different people, a different time. In the east, where it meets the Bohai Sea at the famous Shanhaiguan Pass, the wall meets water, like the edge of a story dissolving into tide. This place is called Lao Long Tu, the old dragon's head, where the wall begins or ends, depending on which way you are walking. Here, it reaches into the sea itself, a stone tongue tasting the salt air. Emperors once stood here, watching ships drift in from unknown horizons, confident that the wall would hold behind them. But not even dragons can remain still forever. The wall shifted, retracted, was abandoned and rediscovered. The sea encroached, the bricks weakened. Still, it stood. And now, when people walk out upon that pier of ancient stone, they feel the strange union of earth and ocean, of permanence and change. Move west, and the wall grows higher, bracing itself against the encroaching mountains. At Mutianyu, the stonework is clean and solid, the towers frequent and elegant. Families walk here, children laugh, cameras click, and yet, if you listen past the noise, you can still hear the heartbeat beneath the brick. Climb further, to Jinshanling and Simitai, and the laughter fades. The path narrows. The steps grow steeper. These sections are less restored, more raw. Here, you are not touring. You are traveling. Every stair is uneven. Every turn opens a new vista of distant ridgelines, layered in mist. It is not difficult to imagine a scout here, centuries ago, standing silently at the edge of the world, watching the tree line for movement. In Gubeiku, crumbled towers overlook a sea of green. Some walls here have collapsed entirely, and yet the spirit of the wall remains, not as a shape, but as a feeling. You don't need to see it to know you're near it. The land carries its memory. Further west still, past the lush forests and rice paddies, the wall enters the arid lands, the deserts of Shaanxi, Ningxia, Gansu. The bricks fade into tamped earth, the towers become mounds, the air grows dry, the colors pale, and yet the line continues, faint but unmistakable, like the faint trace of a brushstroke across ancient parchment. At Jiayuguan, the final fortress of the western frontier, the wall concludes in the open hands of a desert gate. There, the Jiayuguan Pass once stood as the edge of civilization. Those who were exiled walked through its gate, knowing they would never return. Those who defended it stood vigilant against the sands, their eyes burned by sun and wind, their swords dulled by time. The gate holds the names of many, but the wall holds the names of more, names never written, never sung, but felt. A stonemason who died before seeing the tower rise. A cook who fed the builders each dawn, his apron singed by coal. A mother who walked 3 days to bring her son a blanket. A child who played beside the wall and never once asked why it was there, because to him it always had been. These are not famous people. They are not emperors, not generals, but they are the soul of the wall. And now, so are you, because as you've walked this far, in thought, in feeling, in the quiet breath between words, you've carried their story forward. You've stepped into the hush between history and dream. You've become, in your stillness, a stone in the greater shape. So now, as you lie back again, perhaps not in a tower, but in your own quiet space, imagine yourself beneath a sky without borders. Imagine the ridgeline stretching around you like a cradle. Imagine the soft roll of wind brushing your face, warm and ancient. You are no longer reading. You are remembering. You are not just listening. You are resting. Let go now. Let the stones carry you. Let the wall surround you not in defense, but in peace. It has stood for thousands of years. Tonight, it stands for you. Sleep, traveler. Sleep like the stone that forgets the hammer. Sleep like the guard who sees no flame on the hills. Sleep like the dragon beneath the wall, dreaming in deep mountain silence. The journey is not over, but tonight it has paused just for you. Not all stories of the Great Wall are written in records. Many were never inked by scholars, never sung in imperial halls, never whispered to foreign diplomats. These stories lived in footpaths and fireplaces, in lullabies sung beside watchtowers, and in the wind that moves through the cracks of old bricks. These are the stories that make the wall not just a structure, but a presence, something living, something with a soul. There is an old tale that once echoed among the garrisons of the Ming frontier, a tale not found in official annals, but remembered by grandfathers who were once children sitting beneath their families' paper lanterns. It tells of a tower that only appears at night, a tower built not of stone, but of forgotten memories, the ones no longer held by any living soul. In this tower, it is said, the spirits of nameless workers walk its circular stairs endlessly, not trapped, but at peace. Each night, they ascend and descend without speaking, their feet brushing the steps like wind brushing wheat. When the moon is full and silence deep enough, the tower appears on a distant ridge. Only a few have ever seen it, and fewer still have spoken of it. But the ones who have say the tower does not vanish. It simply returns to the dream from which it came. In many ways, that is what the Great Wall is, a dream remembered. It is not simply a feat of engineering. It is a tapestry, stitched with vision and sweat, with fear and hope, with war and longing. And its legends are not distractions from its truth. They are its deepest truths, dressed in metaphor. Take the story of the Watcher's daughter. a tale that travelled along the length of the wall for generations. She was said to be the child of a frontier guard, born in the shadow of a lonely tower. Her mother had died young, and her father raised her with the same precision he gave his patrol. By the age of 10, she could spot a hawk a mile away. By 12, she could track movement in the treetops at night. She grew up without games, without softness, but with strength and sight. One day, her father did not return from his watch. Days passed, then weeks. Some said he had gone into the mountains and never returned. Others said he had gone beyond the wall to chase a vision, a dream of something not made from war. The daughter, now alone, took up his post, not because she was told to, but because she could not bear to see the tower empty. She stood there every day, every night, for years, watching. It is said that, in time, even when her body faded and her name was forgotten, the tower never stood empty again. That if you climb the right steps on the right night, you can see her silhouette there, not as ghost, but as memory. Quiet, watchful, endlessly patient. These stories do not contradict the wall's history. They complete it, because the Great Wall was never only about war. It was about watching, about waiting, about believing in a future you might never see. It was a prayer in stone. Even its physical design speaks to this quiet purpose. The wall was not built as a single barricade, but with depth, layers of defense, paths behind towers, storage rooms, inner gates. It was not a wall to shout no. It was a wall to whisper, not yet. Each stretch was carefully planned. The angles of its towers were not arbitrary. They were chosen for maximum sight line and wind resistance. The heights varied, adjusted for terrain and threat. Some towers stood tall with arrow slits and flame pits. Others crouched low, meant for concealment, not combat. There was a section where the bricks had subtle indentations, just enough to catch the feet of those climbing with gear. Another area used small circular stone inserts to allow carts to grip better when pulled uphill. These were details not found in war plans. They were found in the hands of the builders, in the decisions made when no one was watching. The kind of quiet wisdom that only comes from generations of effort. And these decisions are still there. If you walk the wall alone, not the tourist-worn sections, but the wild, forgotten ridges, you can find them. A brick that is half an inch longer, placed precisely so. A narrow groove carved to catch rainwater and direct it from weakening the foundation. A notch where a torch would rest, blackened still by the memory of fire. In these details, you feel the presence of people who never imagined you would stand there. And yet, they built it for you. They built it for the unknown future, for a world beyond their own, for the very breath you now take as you lie still, listening to their work in the quiet of your own room. The wall does not need guards anymore. Its enemies are gone, but it still watches, still waits, and now it watches over you. So sleep, not in fear, but in deep peace. You are on the safest road in the world, a road that has seen all things and still stands, a road lined with the thoughts of those who worked for a tomorrow they could never name. Sleep in their company. They ask for nothing in return, only that you remember. And you do. Now close your eyes. Let your breath move like the wind through a high tower. Let your heart slow like the fading footsteps on ancient stairs. Let the wall cradle you. Tomorrow we will continue. But tonight, be still. The night is long, and the wall is patient. If you sit in silence on the great wall, truly sit for hours, something begins to happen. At first, there is only awareness of the cold stone beneath you, of the wind winding up the hills, of the distant bird call that feels older than language. You might notice the way the horizon bends, the way the line of the wall follows the land instead of cutting through it. Then comes stillness. Then comes presence. And then, after that, something else entirely. Something like understanding, not of history, not of architecture, but of something more subtle. The idea that what you are sitting on is not merely a wall, but a thought made solid, a philosophy built into the earth. Because the wall, in its essence, is not only physical, it is conceptual. It is time, measured in effort. It is continuity, etched in stone. It is patience, expressed through the will of dynasties. It is, perhaps, one of the most durable philosophical statements in the history of the human race. For over 2 millennia, various Chinese dynasties returned to this idea that a great boundary could serve not only as a defense, but as a declaration of identity, that behind the wall there was a sense of order, of unity, of harmony, that beyond the wall was chaos, but within, civilization. Not in a judgmental sense, but in a practical one. The wall was not built to boast. It was built to hold back war, hold in peace, hold up hope. And in doing so, it embodied several deep-rooted elements of Chinese philosophy. The first is Taoism, the idea of harmony with nature, of yielding where needed, of aligning oneself with the natural flow of the world. If you study the wall from the sky, you'll see it rarely cuts across land in a straight line. It bends with rivers, rises with hills, flows like water across rock. The builders understood terrain not as an obstacle, but as a partner. The wall does not defy the mountain, it becomes the mountain. It does not silence the wind, it listens to the wind. This is Taoism in stone. Then there is Confucianism, the moral and social philosophy that shaped China's bureaucracies and family life for centuries. In the wall, we see this in the order of its construction, the measured spacing of towers, the methodical transport of materials, the clear division of roles, the sense of purpose that transcends the individual. The wall is not the work of chaos. It is the result of planning, discipline, and duty. Every tower was placed with intention. Every worker contributed to a whole greater than himself. And finally, there is Buddhism, which teaches the impermanence of all things. This too lives in the wall, because as solid as it seems, the wall is not eternal. It has crumbled. It has been reclaimed by nature. Entire stretches are now no more than vague outlines in the grass. Towers have sunk. Gatehouses have collapsed. And yet this too is a kind of peace. The wall is not fighting decay. It is becoming something else, something quieter, something that teaches without speaking. In its silence, the wall shows us how to let go. In its endurance, it shows us how to stay. In this balance, it becomes a teacher. And so, philosophers have written about the wall not just as history, but as metaphor. They see it as a manifestation of effort over time, a monument to what human beings can build when they work not for glory, but for continuity. There are stories of monks who walked the entire length of the wall as a form of meditation, not to reach a destination, but to feel, step by step, the unfolding of civilization, to understand that progress is not measured in distance, but in depth. To them, each brick was a mantra, each tower a breath, and so it can be for you, even here, even now, because the wall is not only in China, it is in your mind, in your habits, in the quiet rituals of your day, the things you build slowly, the things you keep, the things you return to, not because they are easy, but because they are true. You may never walk the wall in person, but you already walk its meaning. Every time you choose patience over impulse, every time you return to something difficult and do it anyway, every time you endure, not loudly, but quietly, you walk with them, the builders, the guards, the poets. You carry their same dust, breathe their same wind, share their same dream of something that might outlast you. And so, tonight, as the wall winds once more into the darkness of your thoughts, let it stand not outside you, but within. Let it be the quiet strength that supports your rest. Let it be the soft rhythm beneath your breath. Let it be the foundation on which you build your calm. You are not alone. You are never alone. You are held by the same stone that held so many. Let go now. Sink deeper. Let the mountain cradle your thoughts. Let the old bricks nestle your memories. Let sleep come, like the slow march of builders at dusk. Calm, faithful, without need of haste. Tomorrow, the wall will still be there. And so will you. The wall has never stopped evolving. Even as its towers fade and its stones are softened by centuries of wind, the Great Wall of China continues to shape lives. No longer a fortress, it has become a thread, weaving past into present, myth into memory, earth into meaning. In modern China, the wall lives in many forms. It lives in school books, where students study its construction and purpose, not just as a piece of history, but as a symbol of resilience. It lives in song lyrics and idioms. To have the resolve of the Great Wall is to possess unbreakable will. To hold the pass is to stand one's ground. It lives in the breath of tour guides in every language, who speak of it not as ruins, but as pride. And it lives in the villages scattered near its remains, communities where the wall is not a monument, but part of the landscape. There, locals still point to the mountain ridges and call them by names known for generations. The sleeping ox, the old emperor's elbow, the sky bridge stone. The wall becomes topography, and topography becomes story. Every year, thousands of people from every continent walk its more preserved sections. They climb Badaling's wide stairs, pausing at each tower to gaze out over the valley. They hike the rugged spines of Jiangku, where vines tangle the broken stone, and clouds float like gauze beneath their feet. Some even attempt to follow the wall's entire length, from east to west, not to conquer it, but to listen. Because walking the wall today is not about war. It is about wonder. It is about the slow, mindful act of touching something too large to fully understand, and doing so anyway. It is about putting your feet where builders once knelt, about laying your hand on a stone that a soldier may have leaned on, a poet may have carved a name into, a child may have kissed before saying goodbye to a parent. And as you walk, you realize this wall does not keep people apart anymore. It brings them together. Tourists from dozens of countries pause at towers to share water, to share stories. Hikers offer hands to strangers on steep climbs. There is laughter where once there were horns. There are photographs where once there were arrows. And there is silence, respected, reverent, human silence, where once there was the noise of commands and hammering. Even governments, long past their imperial ambitions, now work to preserve the wall for what it truly is, a treasure that belongs to the whole world. UNESCO's designation in 1987 brought new resources and global awareness. Chinese archaeologists and preservationists began mapping the full length, not just the famous parts, but the forgotten stretches, the wild wall, the vanished towers in deserts and forests. Drones flew over broken valleys. Infrared scanning revealed foundations buried by time. In one project, villagers volunteered to carry buckets of water up a steep pass, so bricks could be laid with traditional mortar. No cement, no shortcuts, just hands, just will. And just like that, the spirit of the old builders returned, not in conquest, but in care. And still, despite the attention, much of the wall remains untouched. And it is in these places, the quiet ones, where the wall feels most itself. You might stand there, in a forgotten watchtower far from the cities, and look out over fields that shimmer with rice. Below, an old man herds goats along a dirt path. A child waves from the courtyard of a school. A crow calls once, then is gone. There is no plaque, no music, no explanation. But you understand anyway. The wall is not just something built long ago. It is something that continues. It continues in those who restore it, in those who walk it, in those who dream by it, and in you. Because tonight, you too have walked its long spine, not with boots and blisters, but with breath, with patience, with thought, with your heart open to something older than any map. And so, we arrive at the final tower. It is neither grand nor ruined. It is simply there. You climb its steps slowly. Each one feels like a memory. Each one brings you closer to stillness. At the top, you see it all. The line of the wall behind you, long, quiet, dignified. The land before you, wide, free, and waiting. And the sky above, infinite and kind. You sit down. You close your eyes. And for a long moment, nothing moves. Not the wind, not the world. Only your breath, slow and deep, like the drumbeat of centuries. And then, gently, you let go. Let go of thought. Let go of time. Let go of the world below the wall. You are safe. You are part of something vast. You are a single note in a song that began 2,000 years ago. And the song plays on. Sleep now. The wall holds you. Not to keep danger out, but to keep peace in. You are home. You are stone. You are sky. You are still.